Welcome back to another action-packed week, I guess, of 42nd Street Peach Grindhouse, really weird cinema. And today I'm taking you back to 1978, to a film that some people denied ever existed. Now, I saw this when I was roaming around 42nd Street. I think I was heading to the dating room or some other massage joint for a little rub and tug or whatever. When I look across the street in one theater, I think it might have been, maybe the Lyric, I'm not sure. But on the marquee was this title, The $6,000 Bleeper. And I was like, what the fuck? And this was around the time of the $6 Million Man. So I'm like, all right, I didn't go see it. And that word on a marquee wasn't, unknown at that time because you had the legend of Bleeper Charlie, the soul of Bleeper Charlie, Boss Bleeper, whatever, with Fred Williams and stuff. So anyway, I found this also listed in a theater times table from 1978. But after that, it sort of disappeared. So what exactly is it? Well, there was a comedian, underground comedian in the same tone as Red Fox, Rudy Ray Moore, Doug Clark, and the Hot Nuts, named Wild Man Steve. And Wild Man Steve was in Petey Wheatstraw with Rudy Ray Moore. So what they did was, Wild Man Steve is cast as Steve, a wino, who was beaten up by fellow winos, and is picked up by these two black crooks who work for this midget professor who talks with a Nazi accent and has a big-titted blonde girlfriend. So the premise is that they came up with this formula that basically makes people super strong, but they die after 6 days of being on it. So they want to get Steve all hyped up and use him to heist the fucking safe full of diamonds. So they clean Steve up and put him with a hooker. Now, you have to realize that a lot of the stuff in this film comes off Wild Man Steve's comedy bits. The professor has a hot assistant named Peggy, a really hot black chick, and she's taking care of Steve, and they're priming Steve for this whole thing. So, after spending the night with a hooker, who the professor balks on because Steve has to be at full strength, so he can't do this stuff. So they make the arrangements for the whole deal that they're going to go borrow a safe as a joke on the owner. So Steve gets the pill and he's not supposed to eat for after midnight, rather. Can't have anything after midnight, sort of like going for a blood test. So he's with Peggy, who announces that she's a virgin, which turns Steve on totally, and Steve basically jumps her under the covers and is doing stuff like, she goes, Steve, can you take your ring off? It hurts. And he goes, that ain't my ring, it's my wristwatch. And then they're going back to the whole thing about, well, I hope Steve doesn't eat anything after midnight. And they pan back to the bedroom scene where Steve is under the covers, obviously munching some carpet. And Peggy goes, Steve, I don't think you're supposed to eat anything after midnight. And he goes, I don't think this counts. So anyway, they go back and they have to practice. Steve has to lift up this 2,000-pound safe, which is obviously a styrofoam safe. So they go to the jewelry store where the professor and his girlfriend come in and have a big argument over a diamond ring, and she calls him a cheap bastard. He's not going to buy the ring. In the meantime, Steve and one of the thugs sneak in and walk out with the safe, which they toss into the trunk of a Cadillac, which doesn't even move. So they go out there, they open the safe, and take the diamonds. Well, Steve starts to get an idea that something's fucking wrong here and hides the diamonds under a big rock. So now there's a falling out between thieves, and Steve and Peggy are brought back and told that, they ain't going to do nothing to Steve because he's going to die anyway, but Peggy came up with an antidote that they mixed up and drank like 8 gallons of this shit, foaming, vile foamy liquids, whatever. So anyway, the two crooks have it out and shoot each other, and Steve and Peggy are about to leave when the professor shows up with a gun and holds it on him and says, I'm taking the diamonds, and as he walks away, one of the dying crooks blows him away, and that's the end of it. Steve and Peggy take off with the diamonds. Thankfully, there was a sequel promised that never materialized, but Steve did co-star in The Guy from Harlem, another really unwatchable blaxploitation film. Is it a bad film? I thought it was kind of funny. It's completely low budget, you know, a cast of maybe 6. There's no special effects. At one point, Steve was brought back to where he was beat up by fellow winos so he can beat them up in one of the most horrendous kung fu fights ever fucking filmed. For some reason, I recall running across Wild Man Steve back in the day in a nightclub. I don't think I went in to see the act. I might have been in the bar outside the lounge, but I think he was the main attraction and I heard some of his act. So I know he bounced around New York, as did Rudy, as did a lot of these guys. So this film is out as Super Soul Brother or something like that on AFCA. It still has the $6,000 bleeper in the title. So anyway, that sort of like cements the fact that, yeah, I did see it, yeah, it does exist, and yeah, you can still get it, and is it worth watching? I thought it was funny. I thought it was a hoot, but, you know, I have my own warped sense of humor. And now to go on something else. As people know, I was involved in the independent wrestling scene for a good number of years before I left New Jersey and New York. One of the guys that was involved was a guy named Jeff Cannonball, who was a deathmatch wrestler. I never met Jeff. I had left before this had happened. And Jeff was part of my friend Mr. Insanity Toby Klein's retirement match in a 3-way dance with Matt Tremont. Well, unfortunately, Jeff has been diagnosed with ALS. Jeff recently, a year and a half ago, had his son Milo, is married to a female wrestler, what the hell's her name? Tara. I can't remember her last name. Oh shit, that's bad. But anyway, if you go on YouTube, there is a show called Cannonballfest. And in the show, it's just about a bunch of indie wrestlers paying tribute and trying to raise cash to help the Cannonball family. My friend Gary Clark passed away from ALS. It's, hate to say it, it is a death sentence. And having a 1.5-year-old son kind of sucks, and leaving Tara Calloway, that's her last name, Tara Calloway. Having a wife and 1.5-year-old son to carry on in your absence is not the way people want to leave this world. So anyway, I watched the card. A lot of people showed up that, you know, Megan Bain from AEW, Willow Nightingale from AEW, Tommy Dreamer from ECW. 4 guys that used to be mid-carders in Jersey All Pro Wrestling, Arcadia, Corvus Spear, Azrael, and Dan Barry showed up. And I really enjoyed that match because I hadn't seen these guys in like 15 years. The main event is Mike Speedball Bailey against Matt Tremont. And it's a clash of styles, and it's a really good match. Other guys that appeared on the card were Crowbar, Schlack, Jimmy Lloyd, Nyla Rose was a surprise, as well as some other people. So my point in saying this is that the wrestling community, unlike other communities, came together to help the Cannonball family. And what I'm asking you to do is, because I just did this myself, is watch the card if you're a wrestling fan. If you like the card, throw the Cannonball family a few bucks. It sucks when a guy that young and in the prime of his life gets struck down with a disease like ALS. And like I said, my dear friend Gary Clark passed away from that. And I was with them all the way, and it kind of sucks. And I feel for the Cannonball family. And like I said, I threw a little something toward them for this helped support the whole thing. So that's my show for today. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for tuning in. Above all, stay safe, and we'll catch you on the flip side.